creative operations to me is kind of like the way you get from point A to point B. That
Yeah.
every goal starts with, hey, we're here, we want to get there. We're the car that drives you.
Hello everyone, my name is Karan Rao and welcome to On Air with Rocketium. Today we have Santiago Gonzalez and he's from Wayfair across various organizations in CreativeOps. So Santiago, thank you so much for taking the time today. Do you want to share a little bit about yourself as we get started?
Yeah, absolutely. And happy to join this and kind of chat all things creative ops. So I'm Santiago Gonzalez. I've been here at Wayfair for just a bit over 4 years. Before that, I spent 10 years working in documentary, film, TV, kind of the whole spectrum marketing, and landed here at Wayfair because they were trying to expand their market share. And, this was right before the pandemic and right before the entire world shut down, which drastically changed how we worked. So it was an interesting time to kind of get up
Yeah.
to speed on a bunch of these things. And it really helped expedite a lot of things that we were doing from a creative operational standpoint and kind of forced us into rethinking a lot of our processes, so to speak.
Everyone in North America knows Wayfair, but
Yeah.
for the rest of the globe, if you just wanted to share, a little more about Wayfair, that would be awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Wayfair, we want to be the number one place in home. There are a lot of places that sell home decor and home furnishings, but we're really aiming to be the place you go to because of our massive logistic infrastructure. We are able to deliver those big things like couches,
Yeah.
refrigerators, beds. We've, you know, we're not as old as some of the things that you make old classic like brick and mortar places. The idea of
Yeah.
Wayfair is to bring the most up to date and the most like desired products straight to you online on your
Yeah.
phone, on your tablet, however you want. It's supposed to personalize the shopping experience. No matter if you're in a home or if you're in an apartment, doesn't matter. We want to have everything there for you. And then we're not just like you said in North America. We're big players in the UK, in Germany, and we're just
Nice.
expanding.
Awesome. And we've been in the creative ops space. We live and breathe this for the past 8 years now. And
Yeah,
it's very hard sometimes to help people understand, hey, what is this creative ops, right? So do you mind sharing your tidbits on how you see this function?
yeah, absolutely. Creative operations to me is kind of like the way you get from point A to point B. That
Yeah.
every goal starts with, hey, we're here, we want to get there. We're the car that drives you. And this is true no matter what kind of channel you're on. We are omni-channel working across various teams, whether it be video, imagery, 3D, all the above. Creative operations
Interesting.
allows you to ideally create a holistic processy and workflow so you can do the most with, in some cases, the least amount of people necessary.
Yeah. Do more with less. So,
Exactly.
okay. And you started this conversation on an interesting note that you joined Wayfair at a time when they wanted to increase market share, right? And generally you think of market share, all of these as revenue related goals, marketing related goals. We do believe that creative ops has a very important role to play to partner with business. But in your case, what was that journey like?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, market share is when you think about this from a creative operations standpoint, you're really focusing on how you can get the biggest selection of messaging, either textually, visually to your customer. Market share can be, oh, people are going on site and some data based on like click-through rates and things like that, which is very much on the marketing side. On the creative side, it's how do we do what we're already doing, but have more assets delivered on the back end.
Yeah. And I tell some of our customers that communication today has gotten extremely complex, right? Back in the day, you had one creative you would put on the billboard, the same would go into your newspaper ad. But today, what has happened is you have so many channels, you have so many types of customers. Digital is allowing you to target your customers so well. So now suddenly you need this machinery to churn out all these different assets and all these different variations and at breakneck speed so that you can continuously have refreshed creatives for your customers, right? So I think the nature of the challenge has been that as communication has evolved, the machinery required to keep it living and breathing has evolved as well.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about, even just a couple of years ago, 4 or 5 years ago, a lot of places were in a situation where like, okay, we have broadcast, we have on-site, we have banner ads, we have catalog assets or social channels, and these are all siloed teams. And let's be honest, a
Yeah.
lot of creative operations for far too long, and to this day, for some places, this is the truth, exist in like Excel sheets, right? Like I can't tell you how many times someone's been like, here's the Excel sheet with like a link to a master asset, and then there's like 7 different teams in there, just like posting, copy pasting. It's like, okay, here's what your deliverable for this, this, this. Here's these aspect ratios. Three years ago, suddenly you're from home. You can't just like be in the office with somebody and going through all these different deliverables. So you
Yeah.
start to think about how are we going to do this faster with as minimal communication, because communication, while ideally good, can also cause spin.
Yeah.
So that's where you get into what is our technical base for creating variance across channel. There's no world now where you can create a master asset and then need somebody to create a banner ad, a catalog version of it, a social vertical version of it. Like that's a waste of time.
Yeah. For sure. And maybe we change gears a bit and also go into your own creative ops, right? So how is your team structured? What does the entire setup at Wayfair look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm one of the senior managers with the creative operations team. I'm also the head of post production, so specifically on the video side for all North America for our video ads, broadcast, CTV, online video, just working with the on the creative aspect of it. We've been very lucky to have a long-term like hive mindset on creative ops. As things have changed, we've had some key leaders stay and drive our vision forward from a creative operations standpoint.
Okay.
Because the fact is like we are on, like I said, physical retail. We're opening a store this year. We've also have multiple specialty retail brands that fall under the Wayfair umbrella, which include like Joss& Main, All Modern, Paragold. So each one of these has their own lane. But from a
Okay.
creative operations standpoint, we were all under the same working mindset on OKRs and like sharing KPIs, which allows us to share our workflows across and streamline everything. So those, then you add imagery, then you add things like 3D and automation, all that stuff came together. And then I started leading a lane specifically around our tech innovation and AI infrastructure.
Oh, interesting. And if you had to just map out your workflow, right? So, for example, let's say we have a brief, right? That based on a certain strategic initiative that marketing has, the creative ops team has to deliver on certain assets. If you had to just map out what does that process look like at your end, what would that look like?
Yeah, I mean, I always like to say that while the channels are different, I think this can be found in a lot of different places, not just Wayfair. The process at its very core is basically the same, right? Like you get that brief from marketing with what they want. Deliverables aren't always exactly what you end up with, but
Yeah.
the whole point is the brief gives you the conversation.
Yeah.
You kick off that brief, you talk about what are the key points that you want for this customer facing or B2B asset. Then it creatively internally they start ideating on it, you know, then either if you're reusing, you can just go straight into the post-production process, or you go to your shoot or your copywriters just start ideating and giving list of options. Creative approves it, goes back to marketing. Those channel stakeholders give their feedback, and then you deliver the asset and then start collecting data analytics on it with your
And
insights.
how does your resource management work in that sense? There is some triaging going on, there is some automated way of managing resourcing. What does that look like?
There's always triage. That's just what shifting business needs mean. But
Yeah.
we try to each channel roadmaps a little bit different distances. Some channels are road mapping at a 6 or 12 month cadence and then
Okay.
slightly adjusting as needed. Some channels are like, hey, we have a lot of like quick fire requests, so they're road mapping more in like 2 to 4 week sprints. But the whole point on the creative ops side is we all do it within the same platform, which allows us to know that like, hey, if I need X type of person, if I on the video side need a designer, I can go to that manager from creative operations, already know what their roadmap looks like and see if I can slide into a sprint.
Okay.
Um, And that's something that we're continuously trying to improve. But the whole point is if you're sharing resources, then nothing can ever hopefully get too far behind.
Yeah. Got it. And we like going a little more technical here on this podcast. So I'm
Yeah.
going to ask you this in terms of the process that you follow. What are some platforms that you use, tools that you use that probably organize your process better? Because you did mention there are Excels and that causes sometimes a lot of commotion. There is a lot of back and forth as well when people are involved and they have to give feedback and some improvement areas. So at Wayfair, what does this process look like from a technical standpoint, and what are some good tools and solutions you've come across?
Yeah, so we're really an ecosystem of about like 4 to 5 different platforms throughout the process. So
Okay.
when you talk about brief ingestion and hour logging and road mapping, we're pretty much living inside of that like Atlassian Jira world. So that's where that starts. Then you get into the ideating and the rough concepting of things. Those are done mostly in like Miro or Figma. And then when you go into the actual like final storage and like the asset management side, we are moving towards a third-party vendor. CreativeOps is already on Orange Logic as our digital asset management third-party partner.
Okay.
Wayfair historically created its own internally.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah. And it was great. It served the purposes that it was designed for. It's been the back end of our website for, since we launched. But when you think about AI and automation and expanding a digital asset management system into more than just a library, we had to go third party. That way we could really throw gasoline on the fire instead of continuously trying to build a plane as we fly. And then from that, we plug into a lot of data analytics sites. And obviously we work with like Verizon, YouTube, all the major players on that.
And on the previous step that you mentioned, once,
Yeah.
let's say, the brief goes out and you have to actually create all these assets, where is that happening? Because are you using design software? Are you using any sort of automation there? Any AI?
Oh, yeah.
More.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been playing more and more with AI. Obviously, as we all know, like AI is still kind of a little bit of Wild West. So
Sure.
we've been approaching AI from both what we can build internally. We're working with our internal teams to create a generative AI in terms of like 3D and imagery, kind of like save us some hours needed both internally and from hiring external resources on those images that you see on site for like new rooms. The whole idea is like if we can get to a point where somebody has 5 different items in their cart, you should be able to hit a button and see it in your room.
Yeah.
And that really means you
Very
need to have
cool.
a robust AI engine on the back end of that.
Yeah.
We already have that software for a really cool thing that our tech team did for our retail store, where you can select cards, put them on a table, and it kind of just pops up as your room. Some other uses of AI are we're working with Jasper for AI for some of our email things. And that allows you to get quick responses out to your customers with headlines and that are applicable to what have been clicked through in the past. And then obviously for our creative suite, we are fully in the Adobe world, so everything in the Adobe cloud.
Got it. And seems like you have a very evolved and methodical process already laid out, but every process has areas of improvement. I'm just curious, are there any pain points, any top of mind, like I wish this could have been better, or hey, technologists all around the world, please solve this problem for us? Is there something top of mind that or keeps you up at night?
No, I mean, we figured everything out. I don't think anybody's lied that bold-faced in a podcast yet, but no, obviously, like everybody, I think the constant pain point is feeling like, do we just attack the things that are broken, or how do we invest the time in things that work but could work better?
Yeah.
And a lot of that comes with change management. A lot of that comes with, how do we siphon off enough of our time to test new capabilities with new platforms or capabilities and platforms where we're not utilizing to the fullest?
Yeah.
Balance that against your business priorities.
Yeah.
From a creative operations standpoint, like our number one goal is to deliver. Our number 2 goal is to figure out how to deliver.
Is to deliver more.
Exactly.
Your number 2 goal is to deliver more. So
So it's really just about like having those conversations internally, and we've gotten a lot of really good buy-in about like figuring out the next wave of delivering assets and delivering the message to our customer.
yeah,
Um,
because sorry, please go ahead.
no, 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 that was it.
Yeah, I mean, the space is evolving. There are different ways of solving the problems today and potentially even more efficient ways of solving that problem. Gen AI, like you mentioned, is somewhere interesting enough to explore, but maybe not, from the perspective of it actually working in the context of large brands like yourself. I think there's a little bit of chasm we need to cross from that perspective, right? But anything else on the pain points? Any other challenges that you want others to hear and solve for you?
Yeah, I mean the true pain point that I see moving forward is we we've realized that a lot of what you've done historically is kind of lost every time like a team changes or every time you start moving forward a new project. And there's a lot of cost related to the fact that we don't reuse our assets enough. When you look at, an asset management system, people think like, oh, if it doesn't search that well, that doesn't really matter. It's like, no, that actually really does matter. Metadata and
Absolutely.
governance matters because when you plug in, say you plug in your DAM to the back end of your site, and instead of having to account for a team that says like, okay, this team is responsible for updating like common images to something that is searched, if your damn metadata is built out properly, it can auto push assets
Yeah,
there. It can
yeah,
make sure that you are fully using everything you've ever done to influence and increase the quality of your product. And that gets lost when it's just the mindset of like, okay, we need to do a new thing of this. We need to do a new category, or we need to do a new classification or a new brand asset. And we're just losing the value of what we've already paid for. My favorite thing is like efficiency is profitability, and people kind of
interesting.
get lost in that.
No, for sure. In fact, whenever we work with customers, prospective customers, the first thing we do is what we call a creative audit. So we walk through
Yeah.
their process and we go through, okay, what does your current process look like based on our experience? Where do we think that you need help? Whether or not Rocketium could help in that context. And what we've realized through doing, 100+ of these audits is a lot of slack is built into the non-creative process. So yes, creative production, there is a little bit of slack, but the amount of times you'll just remake assets because, hey, some designer has it in his hard disk and now I don't have access to that because that individual has left. Or there is so much back and forth in just getting the right feedback, incorporating it, not having to get on a call to explain it to that designer. There is so much of this activity that is going on even before and after creative production that it really hurts the efficiency and thereby, like you said, profitability of that entire process. So completely aligned with you on that.
And then the thing is like, I don't want anybody to lose their job, but there's people whose sole responsibility is to be in the middle of, hey, we have this asset, but this channel wants it this way.
Yeah.
And that's their entire job, crossing that gap. When in reality, you could just have this asset and then preset brand guidelines that lets your channel owner go and be like, hey, I need this image for Pinterest. I need this image for catalog. And then it just kicks out that asset with those aspect ratios and any brand guidelines that go along with it.
Perfect.
Some brands want their logo here for this channel versus there for another. You don't need the middle ground. It's a shopping cart. It doesn't have to be anything
Yeah.
harder than that.
And not only that, you can actually extend it to one step further and say that today communication has to be contextual. What you might have on a Meta may not be the same on a Pinterest,
Right.
and you need to curate your messaging accordingly. So apart from guidelines, it's also about the best practices for channels so that your communication is contextual on each of those channels as well.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Any sort of tips and tricks, right? Like something that you've seen you've had a great journey, and as you've kind of evolved these processes, if you had to share some tips and tricks saying that, okay, these things really worked out well for us, or by the way, by doing this, it served our business, it served the business very well. If you wanted to share some of those tips and tricks, that would be awesome. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think the big thing I always keep in mind, I try to tell people is like creative operations Well, we're not creative in the sense of like the designers or the editors or the writers. We do have a certain creativity about what we do. And the
Yeah.
fact is, if you're just making sheets and trackers to make trackers, we're not moving the ball forward. I teach a class at Rutgers University specifically around DAM and AI, and from that, I've
Very cool.
learned from other people that
Okay.
there's things that people just need to be able to take that step on and get buy-in from your leadership, around things we've previously talked about, like data insights, right? There's no reason why, from a creative operations standpoint, you can't work with a partner on your broadcast team, on your catalog team, and say, like, is there something that we could collaborate on that makes our process faster, that makes my end faster in terms of delivering the right assets, not just delivering assets, delivering the right assets.
Right assets.
That makes your life easier in terms of putting those assets in play in market.
Okay.
And I know it's tough because like we all have so many things going on. Teams are changing, teams are shrinking, and you kind of get foxholed into what you're doing. But the fact is, if you can think about that final delivery step, it makes the creation step so much easier.
Okay. Okay. Wow. That's a nice note to end on. Thanks so much, Santiago. I think this was a very enriching conversation. When we think of creative ops and we think of educating a lot of our listeners, our prospective customers all around the world, it's conversations like these that help, right? Because this is a new space. There are a lot of evolved organizations like yourself who've taken the leap and actually have set up specific teams to take this challenge and actually solve for business outcomes like increasing market share, like you spoke about. But some of these insights will definitely be helpful for the rest of our listeners. Anything else? Any parting thoughts before we put this to a close? Okay.
Don't be afraid of change. The people that do the most in what we do are the people that are willing to give an answer and be wrong sometimes. That is the biggest thing that makes companies and organizations get stuck in the mud, and don't be like that.
Amazing. Okay. That was an amazing chat, Santiago. Thanks so much for taking the time.
Thank you so much for the time.
And I know that professionals like yourself are so busy delivering on campaigns day in, day out. So you're taking the time to do this. We really appreciate it. And I hope to continue our conversations. Thanks so much.
Yeah, everybody check out the Wayfair and go on Wayfair. We got some good stuff for you.
Awesome. We'll do that. Thank you.
Thank you.